Hi, welcome to Reawakening Beauty. I'm your host, Shawna Patruno. I'm so excited to have you here. I love talking about all things skin-related, beauty-related, and mind-related. Here I empower you, mind, body, skin, and soul. Today we have a very special episode on busting beauty myths, and one that I wanted to talk about was retinol. So I have a very special guest, Andrea, who's here going to be busting this myth with me. And before we get into it, I just wanted to say thank you, Andrea, for being here.
Thank you, Shawna, for having me on your show.
Super excited. So I guess I'm going to just get right into it. So basically, retinol is one of the holy grail ingredients. It has so many different names. It goes by vitamin A, retinoid, retinols. Andrea, is there any other names that I missed out there? Because there's like a gamut that you might want to add to this list.
Yeah, retinoids in general is sort of an umbrella term for all the different forms of vitamin A, retinol sort of being the most common one and the most standard ingredient in over-the-counter products that I think many people are familiar with. There are certainly more names. There's retinol palmitate, which is a less potent over-the-counter retinoid. There's retinaldehyde, which is a stronger form of retinol. That's over the counter. And then, of course, there are a bunch of prescription retinoids, including adapalene, which I've used before back in my teenage days.
I've used it as well, and I had a very terrible experience with it. And I've actually had really bad experiences, and everybody's so unique with different forms of retinol. But for me, it did not work well. But it was because I was misusing it. So that kind of brings me into like the next question as we're kind of going to break down some myths for you guys. Andrea, why do you think people use it? Like, you started at a young age. I know for myself, I had dark spots and I was concerned with aging, but why were you using it and why do you think others use it?
Well, I was using it primarily for acne. I would say the two biggest reasons why people use any sort of retinoid product is either acne or for anti-aging, be that wrinkles or hyperpigmentation. And the retinoids have been around for a long time, so they've been studied for decades. And there's a lot of clinical research to show that it can be effective for things like acne and anti-aging in reducing wrinkles. But of course, as you mentioned, if it's not used properly, and particularly in dealing with wrinkles, it can actually lead to more adverse situations.
Absolutely. And we're going to dive into that a little bit deeper. And I'm going to tell you a horror story with retinol, what to not do with it. So I guess some of the biggest myths, I guess we should bust those down right now. So a popular one I hear all the time is you can just start using it every day. And that's probably, and you can attest to this, the biggest myth. Do not use it every day. Right?
That absolutely. You have to be really careful with something that's, a synthetic chemical and that comes in very concentrated doses. And you have to be careful first with the type of retinoid that you're using, be that over the counter or prescription. And then within that, so if you're using something with, say, retinol, looking at the different concentrations. And if you don't have that understanding that all these retinoids are different and they have a different impact on the skin, then you could easily overuse it and start using it every day or sometimes multiple times a day, which is something I did when I was younger and had a very bad reaction.
Yes.
And so it's very important to be educated on what you're putting on your skin, particularly with any sort of retinoid vitamin A product.
Yeah, I was shocked. I heard this actually at a dermatologist's office, is that you can use retinol during the day. Now, I know that some retinols, like I've heard different things, but in my opinion, a retinol should be used more at night. Now, this is prescription grade that I'm talking about. A retinol, typically because of the rapid exfoliation, you're creating new baby cells, should be used at night, in my opinion. What would you say to that?
I would absolutely agree with that. I think one of the biggest dangers with using retinol is using it during the day and then going outside, right? Because most people, first and foremost, aren't wearing sunscreen. And for those that are and who are aware of the benefits of using sunscreen, they're likely not using it diligently. And by that, I mean applying it, at least every 2 hours, which is the recommended frequency by which you should be applying it. And then if you're starting off by using something that is stimulating cell turnover, like a retinol, you're really putting your skin at risk to getting sun damage. And if your intention with a retinoid is to reduce your wrinkles, and if you're not properly applying sunscreen and you're using the retinol during the day in the morning, you could very well end up with skin that looks a lot worse than when you started.
Yeah, absolutely. So honestly, don't even start using it, in my opinion, if you're not using a sunscreen, because it's going to be counterintuitive because the sun photo ages us, right? So now you're making your skin extra susceptible. So if you're going to use a retinol, before you even start, I think get into a routine of using sunscreen.
I absolutely agree. Yeah. And another thing I've heard too that some people do is they only use it in the winter. If you're living in more of a northern climate where you're not going outside as much, maybe there's not as much sun. So that would be another thing, but absolutely nighttime only if you're using it.
Okay, so that's one I've heard. I've heard people tell me that you can use it during the day. And no, don't. But the other thing is, don't go into hot areas. Like if you use retinol, and I'm saying probably about 3 days after. Now, if you're rapid exfoliating, you just started a new routine with retinol and you're using prescription grade and your skin is actively peeling, you should not be going into a hot sauna. You should not be doing hot yoga. You will actually cause more harm than anything because you're rapidly exfoliating off those new cells. And now you've got this new exposed skin that is raw and you're going to put it in extreme temperatures. Terrible. What would you say to that, Andrea?
Absolutely. I remember back in the day using some of these prescription, more harsh vitamin A products and going into a sauna and just coming out looking like an absolute tomato. And,
yes.
and I felt like, and my face was like that for days. It almost looked like I had a chemical burn, right?
Yes.
And it's just something you don't think about. They don't tell you.
No one tells you. No one tells you. It's crazy. It's literally crazy because no one tells you that you should be doing those things. So is there any others that you've seen that common mistakes, Andrea, that are, you would say, big no-nos with retinols?
I think, again, just really being mindful of the concentration and understanding that even if you're just dealing with something as standard as retinol, paying attention to the concentration because it varies from, 1% to 0.5 to 0.25. And if you're not conscious of that, then you could be overusing it and end up with serious peeling. I even have a story where the first time I was using it, I was applying a lot of it on my skin because I was trying to get rid of my acne quickly.
Yes.
And of course, I broke out in a serious rash all over my chest and had almost like hive-looking scales. It was not pretty, but it was my body's response saying, stop putting this on your skin, right? So These are harsh chemicals. Yes, they're naturally occurring.
Yeah.
But when you're dealing with these synthetic vitamin A compounds, they are concentrated and they can have adverse effects on the skin.
Absolutely. So that brings me into the next thing, which you kind of touched base on, is stronger better? And absolutely not. In this case, you want to start at microdosing with retinol. And like your experience, I also had a very similar experience where I think I was maybe 23 or 24, I just getting into the derm game. And I went somewhere and I asked for a retinol and I got it and I was applying it obsessively, like every day. And no one told me you couldn't do that. I ruined my skin. I ruined the barrier to my skin and I thinned it. I was told you'll produce more collagen, but I actually made my skin so bad that it turned into tissue paper. So in my opinion, I think the frequency that you should start with, if you're using a higher grade retinol, again, you want to talk to someone who's a professional, is at least once a week to start, and a very small dose. What would you say about the level and how to avoid what happened to me or what happened to you?
Absolutely. I'd say start small, talk to your dermatologist first. And I think another important thing to consider is defining what your skincare goals are, right? Because if the problem is acne, well, there may be different ways of tackling the acne, right? Different products, different lifestyle choices. Yes, internally. And same with aging skin. If your problem is wrinkles or if you're concerned about wrinkles, there may be a different and better way of tackling it. Again, either with different products, lifestyle, diet, less alcohol, those things. So starting off by defining your goals, I think is key. And then seeing, well, what's right for you? Is it going to be a retinol or a vitamin A product? And if so, using a low concentration, starting small, using sunscreen very diligently, preferably with a mineral sunscreen, applying that sunscreen regularly, or trying a more natural retinol alternative, because those exist too.
Yes.
And they tend to be much more gentle.
And they're a great way to get started. We're going to get into the next topic, getting into some alternatives, but age, I think, is a factor too when you're using retinol. Can young people use retinol?
Yeah, I think it goes back to what your goals are. A lot of young people are using it again for acne. They think that's the only solution.
Mm-hmm.
And or to prevent wrinkles and aging from starting, right?
I feel like this is where people are very miseducated on other options. I know that there's natural forms of retinol, so like you get rose hip and all of that, but there's also for other ingredients like glycolics that are really great.
Absolutely.
So I think that everybody hears this word retinol, it's anti-aging, but in my opinion, not everyone should be using it. I don't believe if you have very, very sensitive skin, I don't think you should be using a retinol, maybe a retinol alternative, but high grade prescription, I wouldn't start touching unless you're building up your tolerance by getting the skin barrier and hydrating it. So I even have protocol for some of my clients that as we start using a retinol, I build up the skin barrier by boosting the hydration to even prepare their skin for retinol. Is there anything else that you would want to touch base on?
I think that's a great point, and I'm so glad that you're helping your clients with that, because our skin barrier is constantly being damaged by the external environment. So if we're applying something that's a little bit stronger on our skin and that's really going to be turning over those cells, we need to make sure that we're combining that with other active ingredients and products to maintain moisture and hydration as well.
Absolutely. So you talked a little bit about retinol alternatives, and I listed off a few. I know that you have a big background in this kind of thing. Did you want to talk about any of them, like the retinol alternatives and what they do?
Absolutely. This is a topic that I'm very excited about. I love natural retinol alternatives, natural vitamin C products. And so there happen to be many out there. I'm going to name 3 that are big on the market. The first one being aguaje oil, which is more commonly known as burudi oil. And it comes from the Amazon rainforest and much of South America. So vitamin A occurs naturally in nature in many forms, and we see that in plants. With something like aguaje oil, it has a high concentration of beta carotene, which is the precursor to retinol. So our bodies are great at regulating that process of converting something like a topical beta carotene to retinol in the skin and taking only what it needs. Yes. So you get the benefits of vitamin A, but it's subtle, it's more gentle on the skin, And then when you're using a plant oil, of course, you get all the other added benefits of using a plant oil, like other antioxidants, fatty acids, which are nourishing for the skin and protect the skin's lipid barrier.
Absolutely. Sorry, I wanted to interject. Is something you lose typically when you're using a retinol. So here is an added benefit, which is amazing because typically you're stripping that and you're over drying, but now you're getting those fatty acids.
Absolutely.
Now, something with that ingredient there, would you say still kind of start at once a week, or because it's a natural, you can kind of maybe start like twice a week? How often would you say someone could start using that?
I'd say definitely maybe 2 or 3 times a week.
Okay.
Seeing how your skin responds, and if you're not getting any adverse reactions, to continue using it more. I actually happen to use it every day, usually in the morning. And I know a lot of my clients will use it in the evening.
So I kind of alternate between retinol and using that. I like using it at nighttime. I add a couple drops to my moisturizer, or I use it on its own. But is there any other oils that are out there? You said there was a couple.
Absolutely. Rosehip seed oil is another great natural alternative. Now, it doesn't have beta carotene. What it has is all trans retinoic acid. So that's the mechanism of the vitamin A. And what's great about rosehip seed oil, it's also very high in linoleic acid. So rosehip seed oil is more ideal if you have acne-prone skin and oily skin, because the linoleic acid helps reduce sebum production, right? Whereas something like the aguaje oil is higher in oleic acid. So it's better for dry skin. And of course, with the beta carotene, you have the benefits there of helping with acne. The other kind of big popular retinol alternative out there that's made it in the mainstream over the past few years is bakuchiol.
Yeah.
So aguaje oil and rosehip seed oil are both pure plant oils, meaning that there's no chemical extraction involved. With bakuchiol, there is. So it comes from the babchi seed. And babchi grows primarily in Asia and has been used in Ayurvedic and Chinese medicine for centuries. The extraction of bakuchiol requires chemical processing. So that's one difference. The other difference is that it actually doesn't contain any vitamin A. It's structurally not related in any way to vitamin A, but it behaves like vitamin A on the skin. So that's the mechanism, and that's why it's considered a natural retinol alternative. And because it's an extract, it can be added to different serums and creams and have varying concentrations. So that's another option. If you're looking for something natural, but also something maybe a little bit stronger, then looking for a bakuchiol in a higher concentration and in something like a serum or a cream would be the way to go for that. And we're very fortunate to have so many options, right?
I actually work with the bakuchi oil and I love it. Like I actually use both products in tandem. And before I was using like medical grade skincare, but I find like the alternating of both of them, I really like. I like the differences between both of them. I really like them in tandem.
Absolutely. And you can use them in tandem as well.
Yeah, I like to rotate my retinols, but of course I'm not using them, like I said, whatever you're using, break it up. When you start, don't start, like I've been using retinol for over like 8 years. So this is someone who's very seasoned in this field. So don't start like I do. But as you, over a year's process, you can start to play with different ones. But when your skin's adjusting to new retinols, you want to get it used to that new routine. It's like if you started going to the gym and working out, you wouldn't start going 7 times a week, like doing 2 hours. Like you have to build your body's trust with you, and the skin has to learn to trust the ingredient. And then after a couple months, then maybe you can add in different forms. But I would say start with one retinol for at least a couple months, start at once a week, build up gradually. Sun protection's number one. And I think that is like the perfect way to start a retinol routine. But I think working with someone very closely, because I think skincare, is like creating like a personal program. Like you want to have someone where you can say, hey, I'm flaking, because those are other issues. I don't know if we've really talked about it, but the side effects of using a retinol sometimes can be pinkness, redness, a little bit of irritation and dryness. And sometimes it is normal, but if you're not working with someone, you don't really know what is normal and what's not normal. Did you want to talk about any of the side effects, Andrea, before we kind of wrap this up?
Yeah, I mean, I think peeling and dryness and redness and even itchiness can be common. Again, if you're using something a little bit stronger, or if you're new and you're trying to use it more, more often than you should be from the get-go, I think working with someone is very important, whatever your skincare goals are.
Yes.
And I really love your analogy about the gym. I think it's so relevant, because just like the gym, if you start going every day and you haven't gone in a while, what happens is your body and your mind get fatigued and you can easily get discouraged, right?
Yeah.
And the same with skincare. There are benefits to using vitamin A products, but if you're not doing it properly, if you start using something that's too strong, too regularly, too soon, then you can get these big reactions, get discouraged, and stop using it, and then stop getting the benefits of it, right? So working with someone, I think, is key.
Yeah. And of course, like some of the benefits you will see if you properly do it is like pore reduction, dark spot reduction, but sometimes just the basics. Like I have some people who I've talked to and they're like, I want to use retinol. I'm like, do you moisturize your skin? And they're like, no. Well, maybe a great place to start is sunscreen and moisturizer and washing your face. And then you would want to do that for a couple months and then move into like more of your anti-aging or restructuring products. But you have to build the foundation. Like we talked about, like anyone who's wanting to start working out and getting healthy, and say you're eating McDonald's all the time, it's going to be a massive change, and you've got to cultivate that change in lifestyle. Is there anything I left out or something that you think would be helpful?
I think we covered it all.
Yay. Well, let us know if you found this interesting. You can hop over to Andrea's platform. Where can they find you?
The best place to find me is Maya Beauty, and I'm on Instagram and Facebook.
And of course, you can find me at Reawakening Beauty. Feel free to reach out to us and let us know if there's any hot topics you're interested in. We love talking about all things mind, body, skin, and soul. Talk to you all later. Thank you so much for listening to the latest episode of Reawakening Beauty. Subscribe to the podcast, hear more inspirational stories and tips related to all things mind, beauty, skin, and soul. I also encourage you to check out the show notes for additional information about my guest, the topics discussed during the episode, and of course, more information about me, your host, Shawna Patruno. If you want to be a guest on the show or just want to reach out and say hi, you can reach me on Instagram, LinkedIn, or email. All these details can be found in my show notes. Thank you so much for listening and have an amazing day.